This is TWiT.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and this is another video to share my thoughts on an interesting piece of technology in the wonderful world of photography. And it comes from the folks at Sony. I have the honor and pleasure to get my hands on the Sony A7 IV. Correction, I'm not supposed to say A7 IV. I'm supposed to say Alpha 7 IV. I love Brandon, don't you? No, seriously, this is a very, very interesting camera, and I want to tell you about it and compare it to another camera that I've checked out in the past. But first, let me go ahead and just give you the quick tech specs on this. Yes, all of this stuff has been said a gazillion times all over the internet, so I'm just going to make this short and sweet and quick for you. This is a full frame mirrorless camera body. You're going to get 33 megapixels from an image standpoint. If you want to shoot video, you can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second. If you want to shoot slow and quick, which is slow motion, you can shoot in HD at up to 120 frames per second. It also comes with dual card slots, so you don't necessarily have to worry about just having one card. You can have a backup on your extra card slot, which is great for professionals out there doing work. It comes with a beautiful electronic viewfinder, so you can see exactly what you're creating out and about. So whatever you're trying to expose is going to be what you see is what you get, which is just the beautiful side of the mirrorless world. I absolutely love that. Now, this body is going to cost you about $2,500, okay, which is not terribly cheap, but it's not terribly expensive either. This particular body, this is in the, I'm going to put in air quotes, lower tier, if you will, on the professional side of things in Sony's product line. You know, all of these different camera manufacturers, they have their flagship devices, and then it's a trickle down from there, or, they'll have their entry level, and then it just builds up to the flagship. And you're going to see, this be reflected in the price. You're going to see this be reflected in some of the different specs that are available to it. What I dig about this one is a lot of the stuff that is in this particular camera body, I can see it in the A7 Mark IV, A7R Mark IV, as well as the Sony A1. That's their flagship. What do I mean by that? Again, you have the dual card slots. That's a great feature. The autofocus on here, they're using the Bion's chip on here, image processor. So the autofocus is improved from the previous versions of the Sony Alpha 7 series. It's still not perfect, but it's definitely improved. I found a couple of instances where it didn't quite work out nicely for me, but it's really getting there as far as being right on par with the next level or next tier of cameras in the Sony ecosystem. Again, the build quality on this, no, it's not the pro grade, but it still feels quite nice. Sony has just nailed it when it comes to the actual grip and the feel of their mirrorless bodies now. Ever since I got my hands on the Sony A7R Mark IV that Mr. Laporte owns, I was like, okay, Sony, now you have my interest. This is good. The buttons, they're all in the right space for me with someone with big hands like me. It just feels great. I have a dedicated record button when I want to shoot video. All of the dials right here, the little rotating dials like you find on those old school cameras, they're perfectly placed because someone like me, I like to shoot manual when I'm out doing my photography. I don't tend to shoot an aperture priority or shutter priority or things like that, which is totally fine. It's totally fine if you want to do that. But I have just taught myself to shoot in manual, and I can't really shake that. So a lot of times as I'm composing my shot, I will hit these different buttons and dials and things like that to change my aperture, to change my shutter speed, to change my ISO, and to be able to do that quite easily without taking the camera away from my eyes and my face. That is a huge advantage, and you got to give credit where credit is due. Sony's been doing very well with that interface. Canon has always done well with that to me, but it's nice to see that Sony has now pretty much done the same thing with this latest release of its camera bodies, whether it be the flagship A1 or all the way down to this one, the Alpha 7 Mark IV. Okay. This one, in comparison to my beloved Canon, folks, again, it's no secret, I am a Canon fanboy. I am. I want to compare this. I can't compare it to the R5, but I can very easily compare it to the R6 out there, because this is pretty much in that same echelon of where we're trying to get people that are just really thinking, all right, I'm going to get serious about my photography. This is probably the bodies that they're going to buy. So this body compared to the R6, I found it to be quite interesting because they're both the same pricing. Again, $2,500, but there's a couple of things that I think stands out just a little bit more on the Sony side of things. And then there's other things where it's just pretty much even Steven. All right. So from where it stands out a little bit more, you have the mounting system, the lens mount system on the Sony bodies. It's the E mount. On the Canon side of things, it's the RF mount. Now, granted, the RF mount for Canon is huge for them. This is a huge improvement from them because it shortens that distance between the lens and the sensor. And it's just a great technological feat for them, as well as having some other features that they could build into their lenses to help, with composing the shot. That is great. The problem is, if you're a legacy Canon shooter and you come from, say, the 5D Mark IV or lower, you were shooting on the EF mount. And then you had to think about, oh man, I need to reinvest in new lenses because my lenses are not going to be just straight up compatible with this new body that I'd like to buy. Yes, they do have the offerings of an adapter that you can adapt those EF lenses to your Canon body, but sometimes there's going to be some trade-offs. My experience with the adapter was quite all right, but again, sometimes there's going to be some trade-offs. On the Sony side of things, it's just using the E mount, and those E mount lenses are going to work on those older cameras. If you've already been invested inside of the Sony ecosystem, you're going to save a little bit of money because you're not having to worry about buying additional lenses or additional glass, if you will, for your new upgraded cameras. So I got to give props to Sony on that one there. And that really does help push the value of this body in particular. Okay, so next up is the dual card slots on this one. Canon's R6 has a dual card slot. The dual card slots on this one touts a UHS 2 SD card as well as a CF Express Type A card. The CF Express Type A is much more superior from a performance standpoint, but you're going to pay for those cards. They are not cheap. On the Canon side of things, it's just using those two UHS 2 SD cards, and those cards are great. You can still film 4K 60 frames per second. You can still film 1080p at 120 frames per second, but you have to use one of these particular cards. See, this is a UHS 2 card. As you can see, it's got those two bars on the back versus the one that are regular SD cards. So it's going to be a lot faster and allow you to read data off of it and write data onto it in a much more efficient way. Not quite CF Express, but still pretty dadgum good. So again, those are two comparable things there. The autofocus on this one, the Sony autofocus has so much better over the years. You're going to get animal eye autofocus, human eye autofocus, so on and so forth, just as you would with any of those other folks out there. I did find that from time to time, the autofocus was struggling a little bit. I would have my hard-headed son as a model in a scene, and there was a couple times where I go to lock focus on him, but something would pop up in the foreground where it would try to lock onto that. Even though I had the human eye autofocus set, it would find his eye for that half a second, but if he moved, just barely moved, it moved off and latched onto something else in the foreground of the scene. I didn't like that because part of my composition was to have that bit of a blur right there in the foreground. I really wanted it to lock onto him in the background. I was able to work around that, but that was something that I had to just make a mental note of, okay, this autofocus is going to be just a touch off, and I need to make sure I compensate for that. Does that ruin this experience for this camera? No, it doesn't. This is still a solid daggum camera, and it definitely compares up to the Canon R6 that I really, really love. Again, back to the megapixels. You get 20 megapixels on these Canon R6 versus the 33 megapixels here on the Sony A7 IV. That may mean a lot to some people and may not. I was totally fine with 20 megapixels, but at the same time, I'm also someone that likes to crop a lot on my images because sometimes I don't necessarily compose it in camera, or I can't particularly compose it in camera the way that I want. So I'll depend on the crop. Having those extra megapixels gives me that bit of freedom and room to crop in even more and still maintain a pretty high level when it comes to image quality. So that's a plus side for them. But again, overall, these things are quite dadgum balanced out, even down to how many frames per second you can shoot. I think you can shoot 10 frames per second on the A7 IV versus the R6, you get 12, 2 more. Again, very, very close. If you want to get your hands on the Sony A7 IV, you can hop online. We're going to have some affiliate links in the show notes. You can get the body for $2,500 online. You can go to the likes of Amazon or Adorama. Either way, we're going to have some links in the show notes. And if you want to add a lens to this, you can get the kit lens for an additional $500 to, it depends on where you look, $500 to $300 to $500, or you can get one of the G Master lenses, such as this one that I have here, the 24 to 770, and you're going to spend another $1,000 or so. Very, very nice quality glass. It's definitely going to make a difference on this body. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Have you taken a look at the Sony line? Are you an existing Sony user, or vice versa? Are you an existing Canon user that's been thinking about going to the Sony side of things? Let me know. I'm curious. Give me a follow over on Instagram. I'm Ant_Pruitt there. Give me a follow on Twitter. I'm Ant_Pruitt over there as well. I want to hear from you because this is a pretty interesting device. And I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the folks at Sony for thinking of me and sending this camera on over for me to try out. I have enjoyed my time with this. But yeah, y'all let me know. And I'll see you next time here on the network. Y'all take care.